Hey, what's up, computer science? 7th period. This is a video for sort of the second to last one of these. Let me go over quickly what it's going to be. This is not a recap of the project. Some of you guys might want that, and some of you guys might sort of be catching up or needing a little bit of reminder. If that's the case, look at this post from November 4th. We got a video, we got links, we got everything you need right here. And maybe I'll bump this to the top. Yeah, why not? I'll move this to the top, and I'm gonna document it. You know, I always tell you guys, you know, let people know we have comments in our code, we have versions, we have sort of labels on things. You always want to make your stuff make sense. I'm thinking of a way to do this differently next quarter, to have like one homepage that has all the stuff and all the sort of outline of what we're doing. Google Classroom doesn't allow you to pin a post to the top, which would be kind of for that. So next quarter I'll probably have one sort of homepage, maybe a Google Doc or maybe something fancier. But anyway, let's forget about that for now. So this is not a recap. If you want that, get it right here. And this is also not really specific stuff. What I'm going to do for that is to look at everybody individually, or, you know, groups, not individual. But right now I'm looking at another class. You can see all these tabs on the top. This is my my third period. I'm grading their stuff one at a time. Like, I'm just opening one, saying, hey, you got this part, you need to do this part, here's what I suggest, here's a link to what I'm talking about. Go to the next one, same thing. So it's taking me some time, obviously, but my plan is I'm going to do that for you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to go through my Computer Science 1 classes and just open up each group's thing. If they've got their tutorial, I'll say, well, here are some possibilities of what you might do next. If they are doing something next, then I'll say, oh, this is a good idea, here's a hint, or here's a site that I've used in the past that helped me, or here's an idea, etc., etc. If they haven't got the tutorial yet, I'll say, hey, look at this post with all your recap stuff. Or if they don't have anything at all, I might call home or send an email or something, because I don't want people to get an F, you know. Anyway, today it's going to be something else. Not recap, not super specifics, but it's going to be some general tips. And I think that's really important, because a lot of what I would say is the same stuff for every person. Let me open this guy. I think this is what we're looking for. And a lot of what I would say is not about, oh, in line 11 you need to do this, but it's more a general approach. So let me get to it. I don't want this video to be super long. Number one tip, absolutely for everything, not just this project, is to hit run all the time. When you open it, hit run. When you change something, hit run. When you're going to close it, hit run, okay? Because you want to see what happens. You want to see what the code does. If it does what you wanted, if it does something else, if it doesn't work at all. So let's say, for example, I opened this up and then I changed something, and then I hit run. Well, I wouldn't know if it was the thing I changed, or if that caused the problem, or something else. So I'm going to hit run before I do anything. And now I go, okay, all right, works. I'm reminded that this is based off a Google Sheet that I was messing with, just as an example, so it doesn't actually make sense. Also, that's a little weird. What's going on with the color? I maybe should look at that. And maybe you can't see that on your view, but see how the color's a bit weird? Do you guys get that? Maybe it's just something with the preview window. Maybe if I open this in a new tab, it wouldn't have the same thing. Yeah, maybe it just has to do with the preview window being messed up. By the way, did you notice when I hit run on that, or when I opened it in a new tab, it's like gray for a second and then it turns yellow? That's interesting to note because it means that this is loading up, and then in a separate step, in a later step, it is getting the style. It is getting the yellow. In fact, we can see the line that's doing that. I'm going to move my webcam back over here. Well, actually, one of the benefits of running is sometimes it'll tell you about an error, and in that case, you might see it in the little console over here. But this function, when you run it, it says, hey, if we're in the welcome state, then the background turns yellow, which it's kind of nice to know just what order the things happen. Like the fact that the site or the page is fired up and it's gray and then it turns yellow. It's nice to know that those are separate things, that like those elements of the welcome page are not gray at first. They're made yellow, or they are gray at first. They're not yellow until you know, a half second later. It's just nice to know those things, and like whenever you hit run a bunch of times, you might notice little things like that. But anyway, let's say we were going to change something. Let's say we were going to make this blue, and then if I change that and then change some other stuff and went around and eventually tried it, who knows if it would work. But if I change one thing and try this one thing, boom, I see, hey, it works. What happens when I go to the next one? Hey, it's back the way it was. So that didn't ruin it, which is nice. I'm going to change this back because I'm kind of still using this as the example. But the point is, whenever you change anything or open it or close it, I would recommend hit run all the time. Okay? And that's for small changes. If you were going to do one color, one line, one thing, I would hit run. If you were going to do something bigger, like for example, let's say you're going to go, let's add a button. Let's add a button that does a hint. So we're going to make a new column in our spreadsheet that has a hint for each question, and we're going to add that as a separate button on every question. You can hit hint if you want and get that to pop up. I would say you might want to keep what you've got and then do this in a separate file. So what I would say is use this feature called fork. Fork is often used on other people's projects. Whenever you see something that you like and you want to do your own version, you hit fork and it'll make a copy, and you can mess with the copy and it doesn't affect the original. But it's great for your own stuff too. If you say, hey guys, keep what you've got, but I want to try something. You could do it on this, and then if it doesn't work, you go back and try to hit undo or go to a previous version. This does have some of those features, kind of like a Google Doc, but it's much nicer if you're going to make a big change to use fork and create a copy of this, mess with the copy, and if it works, cool, you can go with that. If it doesn't, you can go back to the original and it's still working. Okay, so that kind of brings me to my second tip, which is really just a version of the same thing, which is that your page or your program or whatever you're working on should work at every step. Okay, if you think I'm going to change one thing, test it. Change one thing, test it. Change another thing, test it. And at each point it's working, then you can never go astray. Like you can never go that wrong, because if there's a problem, you just go back a tiny bit. It's like in a video game, if you have checkpoints and it saves, then, well, you go a little bit further and you dive it it's not a huge loss to start there. If it's one of those games that doesn't have those and you really go far and then die and you have to start way back, that's a different situation. So test what you're doing at every step and make sure it works. If you test something and it doesn't, and then you keep going, or if you don't test at all and you just keep changing things, then if it ends up not working, you have to go way back, and it's a real difficult situation. Okay, yes, there are some times if you're a super expert, then you might like go out on a limb and change a few things, knowing that it's going to work once you get like 5 parts to work together. But I wouldn't recommend it at all. Okay, I would think of this as evolution. If you think of real evolution with living things, every generation has to live. The genes can't say, okay, look, guys, we're going to do some bad ones for a couple hundred years, and then eventually it's going to work. No, the genes have to make an animal or a plant or a fungus or whatever that survives and reproduces every time, eventually changing a lot, but each time just a little bit, okay? So if you were going to do something, for example, if I was going to change the background into an image, if I was going to say, hey, let's make the background an image, first I would try making it a different color, just because I would know, like, does it work to change this? Does it ruin anything? Does it mess up the system? If I change this to blue and it works, then I go, okay, that's a tiny bit. Now I know that part works. Then I would say, okay, let's get an image, try to change that. You couldn't just put it background and then, you know, throw it in the parentheses. You'd have to figure out, do I need JavaScript? Do I need another line? Do I need to use HTML or CSS in concert with the JavaScript? Do I need a certain type of image? Do I need a certain size of image? I don't know. You'd have to change that. I know some groups have, and it's worked, but I would absolutely not change this to an image. Change this to an image. Oh, by the way, this is one that we did try. We did try making this an image that I was doing as an example for somebody else. But I would not like change this one, this one, this one, this one, and then hit run, because if it doesn't work, then you have a huge disaster and you have to undo a lot. But if you try a little bit at a time and it works each step along the way, then you have those checkpoints and you have those generations. That means you're never going too far out on a limb. You're just doing a little bit at a time. Okay. Another tip is to use the About page on the project for more than just the tutorial. So if you see this page, you see I've visited a bunch, so when I started typing, it filled in my URL bar. If you're going there, you can go to it from this post that I bumped. And it has the tutorial, which you used in order to make this in the first place. But when you do that, it has steps, and then it also has another section of steps right here called Code Mod Examples. And I'm going to click that now. This is probably very similar to what you're going to do in your final step. Remember, the project is to make something like this to get the basic tutorial set up, where you have the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS all working together to make a game with a welcome screen, questions, and a final screen. But the next step, the final step, is to do one extra thing. Change the look, add a button, add something on the welcome screen like a category choice, or enter your name, or animations, or sound, or, you know, whatever. So if you're going to do that, you could start from scratch and just figure it out, especially if it's similar to something you did in quarter one. So for example, a lot of people in quarter one added audio to their page. So if you want to add audio, you probably already know how to do that. But if you look at this, it shows a bunch of stuff. So style changes, meaning if you're going to do a different color, or if you're going to have some kind of change to the borders, the shadows, CSS is very readable. It just looks like English, you know, so it's not too hard, but these are nice examples, especially because they're just one thing at a time. And if you're going to do any type of changes to the CSS, you might use this as inspiration, okay? And when you look deeper into one, you might realize that there's more to learn. So for example, this color is not just a word in quotation marks like the preset yellow or preset blue or whatever. This is specifically each value. RGB means red, green, and blue. And you might know that from Code.hs, you might know that from elsewhere, but it is nice to be able to set a color in that fine-grained way. So it even talks about that. It even has a link to another page, a W3 Schools page, which is very nice. If you don't see something in these mod sections on the About page, another tip is to just open up a tab and Google it. Of course, the problem with that is you have to read multiple results and make sure that you choose one that you trust and that is up to date and everything. W3 Schools is a very nice one because it is up to date, it is legit, it is pretty well explained, and they sort of follow a pattern. If you get used to reading them, then you can read another one in the future pretty easily. Like, they always start with this example thing. If you hit try it yourself, it opens a new tab and you can type it and get a little you know, environment to test it out. And what I always like is when you scroll down, it gives you, oh, it doesn't on this one actually, because this is CSS and not HTML. But if you scroll down on one of the HTML ones, it has stuff like the attributes. These guys. This is what I always look up whenever I need to use an HTML tag, and like how do I set the size, the style, the type of certain things. I always look at the table tags or table attributes at the bottom of the W3 Schools page. Anyway, on these, you're not going to do exactly what they do, but you're going to get this into your head as an idea. The true-false thing, that, by the way, this is incredibly easy. This is just to say, like, hey, what happens if you put nothing in a column on your answer sheet? Because the answer sheet gives you 4 slots. And if you put nothing in one, then is it going to get an error? Is it going to get a blank one? What happens if they click the blank one? We don't know, but you can certainly try. And this says, hey, we don't want to display 4 buttons if we don't need 4 buttons. So this could be used for true-false. This could be used for any other possibility that has fewer than 4 choices, if you have 2 or 3. Or even if you wanted to kind of be, if you want to have one, that's kind of a cheater way to do it. The best way, if you wanted to have one step that had 1 button, like, you know, a sort of intermediate step that might give a warning or give a hint, and then you can click OK, you'd probably be better to just make a separate screen. But if you wanted to be silly about it and give a cheater way or a sort of example, quick way to do it, you might use this. Who knows? The point is, you take these examples and you can use them in many ways. They say true false in the title of this page, but you can use it for anything that has fewer than 4 buttons to modify their template. A next question button. This is what I've been talking about, is you can maybe add a button to your questions to do a hint, a back, a skip, something like that. This is not a skip. This is like changing the way the, like normally if you click one, it waits 3 seconds and then goes on. This way it says, hey, instead of waiting, it's just up to the user. It shows the result of the, you know, which one's right, and then it doesn't go to the next one until they click that. So you might not do exactly that. You might want to make a skip or a hint or whatever. But you would still use this idea of, oh, how do I make a button? Well, you use this append thing. You're going to append a button onto the feedback screen, and I would use that if I were making other kinds of buttons. If I were making, you know, trying to think of other ones, like one that says, tell me my score so far, or turn off the music, or whatever. You can make buttons added on to the end by using this function. Category selection. This is cool. And certainly the categories are in there already, so you might as well use them. But even if you don't do exactly this, the idea of this can be used for sort of adding other stuff to the welcome screen. You can modify this idea. So I'm not saying you have to do all these. I'm not saying you have to do any of these. You might do something else. But this is a very good repository of stuff that might inspire you. Okay. In general, I want you guys to pick one thing and do one thing on your game to make it unique, and then do that well. So instead of having like 50 images in the background and 3 new buttons and 10 sounds, I would rather just like pick one thing and do a really good job of that one thing to make yours unique, because we don't have a ton of time and it just stands out more if you have one thing rather than, 50 new items trying to grab your attention on the screen. So that's it for today. Like I said, I wanted to make this video kind of in that mid-range. It's not recap, it's not super specifics, because I've already done one and I'm about to do the other individually. But this is just general tips for just the way to approach these things. So hit run a lot. Use your resources correctly. Use fork if you have to. Use the mod examples on the about page, or Google stuff, and specifically W3 Schools is very good. Don't go find just random guys on YouTube who do tutorials, because those are often kind of bad. Once you look at a bunch, you might figure out which ones are trustworthy, but I have seen students like, find some really inefficient stuff or really bad stuff just from Googling and clicking the first result. So don't do that. Anyway, I want to end this before it becomes a super long video, but I really appreciate people who are following along and people who are not only turning in their stuff, but editing it, changing it, improving it, because that's really how you get something worthy. Is you don't do it all at once and make a giant project in one post. You post a little bit, update it, wait for feedback, change it, listen to your group, do what they think, go on there, and after several steps, then you're getting there. Thanks.